A very good afternoon to all of you. I hope it's audible and I'm visible also. Looks like people are waiting. Good to know. So today we are going to start with the questions which have been covered by UPSC with reference to this topic DPSP. Let me give you a short introduction at first. We have fundamental rights in part 3 of Indian Constitution, and we have DPSP, that is Directive Principles of State Policy, in part 4 of Indian Constitution. If you see this part 3 and part 4, there is a very basic difference between part 3 and part 4. Part 3 are the rights which we have, and on the other hand, part 4 is the right which we should have. And this difference between have and should makes this whole concept of fundamental rights and DPSPs. So, if you talk about this concept of fundamental rights and DPSPs, the basic concept is what we have and what we should have. This concept of what we should have is covered under DPSP. Akansha, Aditya, a very good afternoon dear. Let's see the questions one by one. The point is, if you see this whole section of rights and issues, we have 3 sections into this. The first section is fundamental rights, the second section is DPSPs, and the third section is fundamental duties and other related concepts. If you take an average of last 10 years examination, you will see that every year at least 3 questions are there from these sections. That is, holistically, if we see this section can be assumed as rights and issues. So there will be almost 1 to 2 questions from fundamental rights, maybe a question from DPSP, and maybe a question from fundamental duties. Today we are seeing this DPSP. In the next session we will see fundamental duties also. Let's see this question again. With reference to the Constitution of India, consider the following. Consider the following: fundamental rights, fundamental duties, directive principles of state policy. Which of the above provisions of the Constitution of India are fulfilled by the National Social Assistance Program launched by the Government of India? This question came in year 2010, I think, year 2010. Now the point is, we have been seeing various schemes, various initiatives by the government. We have to understand that these initiatives are related to which among the following? How are these initiatives related to the DPSPs? We also need to understand that with reference to this Article 39, Clause B and Clause C, what are the initiatives we have and how government is trying to improve this social justice situation and economic justice situation. If you see this question, the answer would be mentioned by people as C. Divyanshu C, Tejaswini C. Anybody else? Bhumika, good evening, good afternoon. The point is, with reference to the Constitution of India, consider the following statements: fundamental rights, fundamental duties, and DPSPs. If you see this question, this National Social Assistance Program is mainly focused with reference to this directive principles of state policy. It is not with reference to fundamental duties and fundamental rights. However, we have been seeing with the passage of time that various initiatives have been taken through which this fundamental rights also reflect under this, some sections of this fundamental rights also reflect under this National Social Assistance Program. But it is mainly related to this directive principles of state policy. So the answer would be B only according to UPSC. Let's move to the next question. India is home to lakhs of persons with disabilities. What are the benefits available to them under the law? Now, again, if you see this question, we are talking about the section disabilities. If you see the overall section, we have the section as disabilities also. If you see this section of disabilities, the question, the demand of the question is, what benefits are given to this disadvantaged section or differently abled section in India? And if you see this, whenever you see these types of questions, always try to have a more proper view of these questions. More proper view in the sense that you have to understand that free schooling till the age of 18 years in government, it's a basic thing. We have this option. Preferential allotment of land for setting up business, it is also done at various levels. And we have ramps in public buildings, we generally see this. However, this doesn't mean that everywhere these things will be. But government tries to give these benefits to the persons with disabilities. So the answer would be D only, that is 1, 2 and 3. Let's see another question. Consider the following provisions under the directive principles of state policy as enshrined in the Constitution. A very interesting question. Actually, when you see this DPSP, in this DPSP, you will see various. You can divide this DPSP in also on the basis of various ideologies, and one of these ideologies is Gandhian principles. If you talk about this Gandhian principle, you have to understand that what do we get, what are the DPSPs with reference to Gandhian principle, what are the DPSPs with reference to liberal principles, and so on. If you talk about Gandhian principle, always remember one thing, that Gandhiji is, I mean, whenever you talk about Gandhiji, you have to see the Gandhian view of socialism also. If you talk about this concept of socialism, in India, we have this concept of socialism, but Indian concept of socialism is a blend of Gandhian socialism and Marxist socialism, which is tilted heavily towards this Gandhian socialism. So if you talk about the concept of Gandhian socialism, if you talk about the provisions in DPSP, which is which tends to be on Gandhian principles, then let's read them one by one. Securing for citizens of India a uniform civil code, Article 44. No. Again, organizing village panchayats. Whenever you see anything related to village, always relate Gandhiji with reference to that. So, organizing village panchayats is correct. Again, promoting cottage industries in rural areas. Again, it is with reference to rural areas, it will also be correct. Securing for all the workers reasonable leisure and cultural opportunities. This fourth statement is not correct. So, if you see this, the answer would be B as mentioned by Vicky and Akansha. The answer would be B, that is 2 and 3 only. We are talking about Gandhian principles, which is enshrined or which is reflected in directive principles of state policy. So when you talk about Gandhian principle, which is reflected in DPSP, the answer would be 2 and 3 only. All these are DPSPs, but the answer would be 2 and 3 only. Let's see the next question. With reference to National Legal Services Authority, consider the following statements. National Legal Services Authority. Its objective is to provide free and competent legal services to the weaker sections of the society on the basis of equal opportunity. It issues guidelines for the State Legal Services Authority to implement the legal programs and schemes throughout the country. Now, again the same thing. If you talk about this various initiatives, various schemes, various programs of the government, you have to relate these things with reference to the DPSPs. So next time when you see any initiative of government, any scheme of government, just try to relate it with the DPSPs. Just try to see that how it impacts this DPSP. Once you start having this relationship between these two sections, you will automatically be able to see that how the questions are being framed in examination and how this question needs to be answered. So if you see this, it is also talking about National Legal Services Authority. Can anybody let me know which article of the Constitution talks about National Legal Services Authority? Article of the Constitution. And I am really happy to see that almost all of you are having correct answer with reference to this. National Legal Services Authority. So, if you see this with reference to National Legal Services Authority, we have seen this question again. And if you see all the questions with reference to DPSPs, you will see that UPSC keeps on asking the questions on the same basis again and again. So, you will see, I'll just show you some more questions which you will see that on a regular basis has been asked by UPSC, like the concept of welfare state. Not only this concept of welfare state, but along with this concept of welfare states, we also have the concept associated with justiciability of DPSPs and so on. Let me show you some more questions. Article 49 or 39, Anushtan, 49 or 39, looks like it's typing error. Let's see the next question. Consider the following statements regarding directive principles of state policy. The principle spells out the socio-economic democracy in the country. The provisions contained in these principles are not enforceable by any court of law. Now, I was just talking about this very question. I'll show you that this question has been asked again and again in examination. So, we have something as DPSP in the Constitution. If you see this DPSP, then what is the main aim of this DPSP? We have to understand that, and along with that, we also need to understand that are these principles mentioned in Part 4 of Indian Constitution from Article 36 to Article 51, are these principles justiciable? If you see the justiciability of these principles, you will see that they are not justiciable in any court. So, The provisions contained in these principles are not enforceable by any court. This statement is correct. The first statement, the principles spell out the socio-economic democracy in the country, it is also correct. So, both these statements are correct. The answer would be C, that is both 1 and 2. Why A? It is asking about correct statement. The provisions contained in these principles are not enforceable by any court. That is correct. What is the issue with this? Akansha, love to UPSC. Nice name, love to UPSC. Chalo. Let's see the next question. Again, see the question with reference to welfare states. So, these are the topics which you will see that UPSC keeps on asking on a regular basis. Idea of welfare state. If you talk about this idea of this ideal of welfare state, then we have to see that in Indian constitution, where is it mentioned? Not only this, there can also be a question, or there has UPSC had asked a question with reference to instrument of instructions also. This instrument of instructions was contained in Government of India Act 1935, and from this Government of India Act 1935, Government of India Act 1935, we took this concept of instrument of instructions as this provision of welfare states in Part 4 of Indian Constitution, that is DPSP. So, when we talk about this ideal of welfare state, it is mentioned in Directive Principles of State Policy, but the point is we also need to understand that how this concept of welfare state originated in India. And if you talk about this concept of welfare state being originated in India, then just go through Government of India Act 1935. And when you go through this Government of India Act 1935, you will see that there we had this concept of instrument of instructions. And this instrument of instructions was somewhere like this welfare state only. So, you can see the same thing in Government of India Act 1935 also. And this question has been asked by UPSC various number of times. I will show the question again, don't worry. Let's see the question again. Which principle among the following was added to the directive principles of state policy by 42nd Amendment to the Constitution of India? However, the question may look like it's too tough to remember that what is this 42nd Constitutional Amendment and what were the provisions which were added through 42nd Constitutional Amendment. But if you see this in practical sense, just read the options and you will automatically jump to the answer. Equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Do you think that this provision would have been added by the Constitution, or the initial Constitution or the original Constitution also had the same provision of equal pay for equal work for both men and women? This shows the concept of equality. So, I don't think that this concept needs to be added through any amendment. This would have been in the original Constitution also. Again, if you move forward to the next option, then participation of workers in the management of industries. I don't know. Just assume it as I don't know. I don't know. Let's assume it as I don't know. C, right to work, education and public assistance. Again, if you see this option, it makes very much clear that right to work, education and public assistance should also be in original Constitution. It would not have been added through any amendment. It would have been mentioned in original Constitution also. And if you move to the fourth option, securing living wage and human conditions of work to workers. Again, not related to this. So, the answer would be participation of workers in the management of industries. This was the answer. A, Vicky, how A, dear? This equal pay for equal work was there in the original Constitution also. So, how A can be the answer? A very interesting question. Again, see the same type of question, that is with reference to amendability. Consider the following statements. With reference to the Constitution of India, the directive principles of state policy constitute limitations upon legislative function, executive function. Which of the statements, above statements, are correct? The point is, the demand of this question is with reference to the DPSP, it constitutes limitations upon which among the following? That is legislative functions or executive functions. Now, we have to at first understand that what is DPSP. How can it have any impact on legislative functions? How can it constitutes limitations upon the legislative functions or limitations upon the executive functions, because DPSPs are not the rights which we have. So it cannot have any type of limitation. We cannot go to the court with reference to implementation of DPSPs. So if we cannot go to the courts with reference to implementation of DPSPs, how can it have impact on legislative and executive functions? How can it get limited with reference to this legislative and executive functions? So neither legislative nor executive. See the demand of the question. What this question is all about? It is asking about, with reference to the Constitution of India, the directive principles of state policy constitute limitations upon which among the following? Limitations upon. So there is no limitation, because nobody can, this DPSP is not justiciable. So the answer would be, now I am coming to the right answer. Ankita, love to UPSC Wiki. The answer would be D, because it is not enforceable in the court of law. If it is not enforceable, then how can we have these limitations on legislative and executive functions with reference to this DPSP? See, the point is, I at first specified about DPSPs. What was that? DPSPs are the rights which we, fundamental rights are the rights which we have, and DPSPs are the rights which we should have. This which we have and which we should have. If you are able to differentiate between these two, you will automatically end to understand every concept of this DPSP. Let's move to the next question. Again the same question which we saw earlier. Again we have the same question. Which part of the Constitution of India declares the ideal of welfare state? Now we have seen this question earlier also. We are seeing this question here also. So this question keeps on coming in examination again and again, that is this ideal of welfare state. If you talk about this concept of, or this ideal of welfare state, you have to understand the concept again, that it is in DPSPs. This DPSP provides us with the concept of welfare state. Now, if you see these questions, when we are discussing this question on a daily basis from Monday to Friday, so you might have seen that we keep on specifying the same question, and this shows the importance of previous year questions in UPSC. If you are able to understand this previous year questions properly, if you are able to go through the themes of this previous year questions properly, you will see that every year majority of the themes are repeated in examination, and that is why we have this initiative. So majority of the themes will get repeated in examination again and again. That is why just go through these previous year questions of every section of syllabus. Do we have more questions? Okay, we have some more questions. With reference to the provisions contained in Part 4 of the Constitution of India, which of the following statements are correct? Part 4, that is DPSP. If you see Part 4 of the Constitution, just try to read the options available with reference to this Part 4 of the Constitution. Just see this one by one. The first one is, they shall be enforceable by courts of law. Again the same statement which we have seen various number of times. They shall be enforceable by courts. Correct or incorrect? Obviously it is incorrect. Part 4 is not enforceable by in the court. So the first statement is correct. Now if you are able to make this first statement as incorrect, you will automatically understand that the second statement is correct. This automatically makes the second statement correct. This is how you have to use the options also. So first statement is incorrect. This means second statement is correct. Now let's come back to the third statement. If you see the third statement, it specifies the principles laid down in this part are to influence the making of laws by the state. A very generalistic statement. Very generalistic statement, not an exact statement, a very generalistic statement. It specifies that the principles which we see in Part 3 of Indian Constitution, they influence the making of laws, and this is the reality with reference to preamble and DPSP. If you see preamble and DPSPs, then preamble works as the guiding star for the lawmakers, and this DPSP works as the book of interpretation. And this is how we see the use of preamble and DPSPs. I am specifying these two mainly because both of these, if you see both of these, you will see that they are not enforceable in court of law. And when they are not enforceable in court of law, then what is the purpose of this preamble and DPSPs? So the third statement is correct. When this third statement is correct, then the answer would be D, that is 2 and 3. Try to eliminate the options like this in examination also. Try to eliminate not only, try to eliminate these options, and if you start having this habit of eliminating the options, you will automatically see that you will be able to go through at least 10 to 15 more questions in examination. Let's see. Under the Indian Constitution, concentration of wealth violates. See the standard of question. I mean, if you keep on going through these questions, you will see that the questions are very simple. And I am not saying this because I am discussing polity here. This is the reality with reference to the examination also. So there are certain questions which are very much simple. We just need to go through these things. If you have read it, it will automatically look simple to you. So under the Indian Constitution, concentration of wealth violates right to equality, directive principles of state policy, right to freedom, and concept of welfare. See, all these options have been given so that students get confused. The answer would simply be DPSP. There are two reasons behind this DPSP. The first reason is we are discussing the questions of DPSP, so the answer would be DPSP only. So you can easily guess answers of various questions. Answer would be DPSP only, because we are discussing here DPSP. The second thing is, if you see this DPSP, if you come to the concept of DPSPs, you have to also understand that this concentration of wealth, this concept of concentration of wealth, if you see, this aims to this is something which is aimed under this directive principles of state policy only. If you come to this concept of welfare, as nobody answered D, okay, everybody is with B only, then it's okay. Do we have any other question, some more question? Chalo, let's see the last question. Okay, this is the last question. So these are the questions with reference to directive principles of state policy mentioned in Article 39. Okay, so these are the questions with reference to DPSPs. Always start with the concept that DPSPs or fundamental rights are the rights which we have, and DPSPs are the rights which we should have. And from this very concept, we can go through this whole section. One more thing, the articles are associated with fundamental rights and DPSPs needs to be understood properly to solve the questions in examination. So I would also suggest that please go through these articles, that is from Article 12 to Article 51 of Indian Constitution. And this definition of a state which we see in Article 12 of Indian Constitution is same for Part 3 as well as Part 4 of Indian Constitution. So we have the same definition of a state in Part 3 and Part 4 also. The definition of a state which we see under Article 12 of Indian Constitution. However, the definition of a state with reference to judiciary is something else. So if you talk about definition of a state, we have Article 12. It provides for definition of states. We also have the concept of Article 131. It also provides for the definition of states. But here in this 131, state means something else. If you see this states, it is something else. The concept of state which we need to see needs to be seen under this Article 12 of Indian Constitution, and under Part 3 as well as Part 4 of Indian Constitution, this same definition is used. That is the definition which we see in Article 12. If there is anything else, please let me know. Otherwise, this is all we have for the day. Tomorrow we will see the questions associated with fundamental duties. Aditya, Ankita, thank you everyone. Let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow we will see these fundamental duties. Till then, thank you for the patience, for having for being here. Have a good day. Bye bye.